was getting crazy about it. The next day, Pendu tried to avoid him, but again he caught on to him. So Pendu writes that fortunately, Aloba happened to be around me. And it was Don's ill luck that he happened to mention the Shah of Iran. No sooner Aloba heard the words Shah of Iran, Aloba took over. So Aloba said, wait a minute, I have to tell you something, Don. It's something very interesting. And he started the very history of Iran started to come out from Aloba. So Pendu was greatly relieved because Aloba was now latched on to Donkin. So Aloba kept on talking non-stop. So then Don began to get a little nervous that is he going to stop or not? And so Don retreated to the toilet. So Aloba followed him to the toilet. And from outside he was shouting his story, continuing with the story of Iran, So eventually Don suddenly opened the toilet door and rushed to his room. And Aloba in hot pursuit, Pendu writes, talking about Iran and other things. And then Don fleeing to his room and bolting the door with a loud bang and locking himself in. And Aloba banging the doors from outside and said, listen to this last thing, it's really interesting. But Don wouldn't open the door and he started to shout. And he says that after that Don didn't venture to come out for days from his room. So when Baba heard all this, Baba was really in giggles and it was such a funny incident that Pendu described in great detail. I wish somebody had kept that letter.
Oh, yeah.
Might be in the file or something. But this was it, Baba.
It's hard for me to imagine Donkin talking on and on. He was very silent.
No, he had become eccentric like this. Otherwise he would lock himself up, he would hate to be disturbed, he didn't like noise. But sometimes when he started to talk, it would be just irrelevant, unimportant things, he would just keep jabbering and you had to keep listening to him, that's all. So something had happened to him,
Did Baba ever comment on that, or?
No, but he would bear up with all these idiosyncrasies, And of course the new life also had taken its toll on Donkin. He faced great privations in new life. And after that this book. So I think something had snapped somewhere in Don's anatomy. Something must have happened. So he had become a little eccentric after that.
Was he like that for the rest of his life?
Yeah, for the rest of his life. But later on he quietened down and keep more to himself and would shun crowds or activity. But all the while focused on Baba, yes. As you will see now. So now we come on to this rather unfortunate incident of Baba's second accident. And as I said, Baba was returning to Satara, and later on Airaj mentioned to us that Baba, after leaving outskirts of Pune on the highway, Baba had the car stopped. He was sitting in the front seat besides Airaj. So Baba gets down and exchanges places with Pendu, I think. Pendu? No. Was it Pendu or Vishnu? You see, there were 4 people in the car. Airaj was the driver, Vishnu, Pendu and Nilu. And Airaj. So 4 people and Baba were in the car, all men. So, yes, so Baba exchanged places with either Pendu or Vishnu. Asked him to sit in the front and Baba sat at the back. And then he said to Airaj to proceed. After travelling some time, again Baba halted the car and he says, I want to sit again in the front. So he was sitting besides Nilu for part of the journey, exchanging places like this. Nilu was seated just behind Airaj in the rear seat, and Pendu and Vishnu were in the back seat. So Baba sat in the middle for some time, and then again after a few miles stopped and sat again in his original front seat. And then the car proceeded again. And then as they were approaching Urtala, Airaj mentioned later that suddenly he felt as if the car was on a very slithery and slushy surface, as if there was nothing holding the car. You couldn't control the car, as it were. And it suddenly was lurching out to the left and getting into a ditch. And he, with great effort, he was getting the car back onto the road, and that is all he remembers. What had happened was, what we surmised afterwards was that the car did go into the left side. There was a trench there, sort of not very deep, say about 3 or 4 feet deep. And the car was getting into it, and Airaj must have moved it again. But while moving, there was a culvert in front, and the car just plowed through the culvert. And only the right edge of the car had come onto the road by then. So it just sliced through the culvert, and then again this side of the wheels were not resting probably on earth. They must have been suspended probably, and the motion carrying the car over that culvert. And after that it just went into the ditch and took a turn and was facing back towards Pune. Somehow it didn't turn turtle. Yeah. So that's why the right side of the car was totally smashed. I was working in the office one day, and they were towing that car away just in front of my office. And I went out and I saw it was a total wreck. But this side, the left side of the car was unscratched. The right side was smashed badly. Yeah. So I remember that. And
this was Nariman's car.
Yes, Nariman's car. That's right. So Airaj says he must have passed out because all his ribs had been smashed because of the steering jamming into his chest. And I think Baba's feet were up on the dashboard, if I mistake not.
So Baba was in the front seat then?
Yeah, front seat.
And he switched back.
Yeah. And then Vishnu, who was in the car and who was the least hurt, he had a little bruise in the knee or something, which later was a little painful to him. But at that time he didn't realize it. But he was the least hurt. So he then got out of the car, and he rushed to where Baba was sitting, opened the door, and he mentioned to us that when he opened the door, he didn't see Baba, but he saw a great great flood of light. And he felt as if he saw, it was like Lord Krishna was there in all his glory, having vanquished the foe in battle. He seems to have had such an experience. And he was just completely dazed by that experience, as if a great victory had been accomplished by Baba. And he was victorious and in resplendent glory. That is how he described to us that the scene that confronted him. And after that thing passed out, then he saw Baba sitting there and sort of groaning slightly. Baba says, there's a pain here, pointing to his hip.
The right side.
Yeah. And of course he was badly smashed up in the face also, and he was bleeding. His tongue was cut. So then Vishnu realized the enormity of the situation that had occurred. In the meantime, Erich regained consciousness, and getting up, he found that Nilu was lying on the ground, and he sensed that Nilu was dead, although he didn't let anybody know. But he was lying motionless there on the roadside.
He flew out of the car somehow? Or?
The car door must have flown open. And I think Erich himself was either thrown out or what, I'm not so sure, but he had slumped either on the wheel or he was lying also, half outside or something. Because the doors must have ripped open. It was all totally smashed up, yeah. So it's still unexplainable how the car could have burrowed through this tall culvert, The part of the car not on the road surface and the one part just going through it. So because the left side of the left side culvert had been smashed up, cut through. Had it been the right side, it could have been an easy explanation that the car just dashed against it. But it must have gone off the road and trying to come back, negotiated this culvert there. And this accident occurred. So, yes, and then Erich recollects that he gathered all his strength, and a car that was just passing by, and he stopped them. They found that there was some problem there, and then Vishnu and Erich just helped Baba out of the car, and Erich requested them to give Baba a lift with Vishnu to help, and both got in the car. And then
Baba and Vishnu.
Yeah. And they didn't question anything, they just immediately accepted. Otherwise people would be hesitant to take people involved in accidents. In India it's a great hassle afterwards. So these people just give the lift to Baba. And then Erich says that there was another truck following, carrying some goods. So he just waved to them. They stopped. The driver stopped, and then Erich and asked them to lift Pendu into the... lift Pendu was also badly injured, So Pendu was lifted up into the truck, and he was I think unconscious. And Nilu's body also was dumped there, and they put him also in the truck. And then Erich says he passed out again. The next thing, when he woke up, was in hospital. And he was all bandaged up here. His whole chest was heavily bandaged with elastoplast, because you can't plaster broken ribs. It has just to be kept down, and the breathing is very difficult. Yeah. Each breath means excruciating pain. Yeah. So...
Yeah, he had broken many of his ribs.
Many ribs, yeah. All down, probably. Yeah, it was a severe accident. And then, of course, the women described the scene that they all of a sudden saw a car getting into Grafton, and Mani says that they felt as if some angel had walked in and said, "Please come out. Some of your people are involved in an accident." So they rushed out, and Vishnu helped Baba out. Baba was in tremendous pain. So then
Where was this, Grafton?
Grafton.
Baba went there, not to the hospital?
No, to Grafton.
Oh.
Yeah. And Mera and all, they brought Baba in and made him lie down. Then, of course, Donkin took over, and then the doctor from the hospital was called. I forget his name. It starts from an A. If you ask Erich, he'll tell you the name. I don't remember the name, but he was a very nice person. He rushed there, and then Baba was taken to the hospital, and his leg was put in plaster. And then he was brought back to Grafton, and he was kept in the bed there. Meanwhile, telegrams were sent, and Baba's brother Jal rushed there. Merji, while going, he informed us about the accident. That's when we knew this was the next day. And then he also rushed over there, and they all took turns to attend upon Baba, because Meherji already had the experience in America for the first accident here. So he was well trained and a ready nurse for Baba. And of course there were other assistants. I think, as you said, Bhav was given the order not to move out of bed, but he was so embarrassed about the whole situation. So I don't know the story about Bhav, but that was at that time that. So these people were there to help Baba. And about 7 or 8 days later, Nariman comes to my house at Bindra's and says that we have to take an ambulance to Satara, because he received word that Erich and Pendu should be brought to Pune. So make some preparations and get me an ambulance, and we'll go. I hadn't received any information. So accordingly I went to Sasun Hospital and somehow arranged an ambulance urgently. So we got a good ambulance, and myself and Nariman sat in the ambulance and drove to Satara. On the way, we stopped where the accident occurred and saw the site of the accident where that bridge had been. And I happened to look on the other side, and I said, "Look, Nariman, this is where we played cricket." So it was just directly across the road. So Baba had planned it very well, all meticulously.
Are there still people who remember where this is? Are there people, Baba lovers in Satara, or is the place marked?
I don't know whether they've marked the place or not. David Fenster should know this.
Okay.
He should draw his attention.
Yeah.
It's near Urtara Dak Bungalow. There was a mango grove there in the compound. But I wonder if that is still there or what has happened. So much development has taken place now. The whole road has been widened. The Pune-Satara road was under World Bank aid project, and they later widened the road to almost double its the size at that time. So we don't know what it must be now.
You don't want the spot to be forgotten.
Well, someday somebody might again make some research there. Any case, so we then proceeded to Satara and then drove straight to Grafton. And there we went in, and Baba was all there, and he was in a terrible shape. His whole face, this right side I think, was badly bruised. His nose was all smashed up and had swollen up. His eyes was all swollen up. You could barely see. It was all blue and black in the face. It was a very terrible sight. Yes. And he was lying there in bed with this plastered leg. And Baba says, who asked you to come here? What happened? So Nariman said, we were instructed to bring an ambulance to take Hiraj and Pendu Baba for treatment. So Baba says, all right, go to the hospital. So then, but before that, Meherji takes me aside and says that, look, make arrangements for a good bungalow at Pune as soon as you go, because we are intending to shift Baba to Pune for better treatment. So we'll persuade Baba to come to Pune. But in the meanwhile, make all efforts to get a good bungalow there as soon as you return now. So then we go to the hospital, and the hospital was chock full of patients. So there was no room for these emergency patients. The only thing vacant was an old stable in the compound. So this quickly renovated the thing somehow, and there were two stables separated by a wall. So in one of them was Hiraj on one bed, and another part of the stable was Pendu there, lying in bed. So yes, and both were in very bad shape. Pendu had a fractured hip and a fractured leg, and he had terrible concussion of the brain. So much so that he had become very disturbed. Yeah, and so when to attend upon him, Sidhuji was called from Meherabad. And Sidhuji had to look after Pendu. But somehow Pendu, in his delirious state, would think Sidhuji was the devil or something, or some Satan. So as soon as Sidhuji tried to enter, Pendu would start shouting, "Get out from here! You come to take my life out of here!" I would get into tantrums. Poor Sidhuji would not know what to do now. But somehow they would quieten him down, give him some injections. So he was delirious actually. He would get these hallucinations and all that. He was very, very seriously injured. And he could have lost his reason also. By Baba's grace, somehow he got over that later. So now we then we tell Hiraj that we have come to take you. So he says, how come? Who asked you all to do this? Some misunderstanding was there. So then the doctor came then, and we told doctor that we have come to take the patients to Pune. So he says, what are you going to take him for? I've given them the best of treatment possible. The same thing they will do in Pune. But if you still wish to take them, it is your responsibility. Because in the case of Eraj, I don't give guarantee for him to survive even a part of the journey.
Really?
Yeah, if you move him, and if one of those fractured ribs enters his lungs and an internal hemorrhage starts, then he won't be able to reach Pune alive. If despite that you wish to, then you please give us in writing, and then I am prepared to release you. So Eraj also overheard, I think, and he says, no, doctor, I am quite happy here, and there is no need to take us. So somehow, and then Pendu, the doctor said, he is in tremendous pain. If you take him now, it will cause him more trouble, and it's better that you let them progress here for some time. And when the time comes, I myself will ask you people to shift them. Don't be in a hurry to remove them. That is my advice to you. So then Nariman also agreed. And we said, all right, doctor, we'll do as you say. And then we returned back in the empty ambulance. So that was the thing. Another incident was when Kaka Baria went to see Baba at Satara. And Baba himself tells us, let's see what a soft heart Kaka has for me, that after seeing me, he went to piddle outside, and while piddling he just fainted. He couldn't bear the sight that confronted him. So Baba says, see his love for me, how great it is. Later on Baba tells us this incident. Yeah, somebody must have reported to Baba that Kaka is unconscious and all that. Yeah. So now coming back home, we came in the evening about 4 or 5 o'clock. We were back in Pune, and I rushed out to contact these house agents, because Maharaj had asked me to get some house ready. So I contacted many house agents. Then I contacted other Baba lovers to help find a house, and the mad scramble for a good house began. And then this one of the house agents, fortunately there was just a recent house that was vacated very close to where Meherji was staying, known as Silver Oaks. In the garden were growing silver oaks. So the house was named Silver Oaks. Nice little cottage which was built in a very modern way with all sort of carvings on the walls and all. Very fancy little house it was, but vacant. And the man showed me, if you want, we can give you this house on hire. So we grabbed that, and we ordered the furniture and everything, and it was made ready quickly. And I sent a telegram to Meherji saying that we've got a good place. And within 8 days, Baba was brought to Pune. So when they brought Baba, we were asked to be at Sasun Hospital. Baba was to be X-rayed. But unfortunately, the X-ray room in Sasun Hospital was on the first floor. And it was a tall, old, structured building without any lift, and those big, narrow staircase. And Baba had to be taken in that stretcher. And I remember the tremendous pain that Baba was suffering in the hip made him groan very loudly. He could barely bear the pain. It was excruciating pain he was suffering. And then they took him up there, they took the x-rays, and then the doctor was there who said that Baba doesn't require any plaster. All he needs is traction, because this sort of thing is not going to heal with plaster. The bone is not in position. So traction should be done so that the bone comes back in place and all. Some such thing was there. So then it was bandaged, and then Baba was brought to the house which we had made ready. And there Baba was kept for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months Baba was in that house. And he was in great pain. Of course, Meherji was attending to him there, and Jalbai and other people were there. Then in the meantime, Airaj was sufficiently recovered, so he was sent over to Pune. So he came on his own somehow. And he was with us in Bindra house. And then Baba would ask him to come to where he was staying. So I would accompany him to this place, Silver Oaks. And we would be there for some time. Airaj would be there. And Pendu was to be shifted also, because the doctor gave the permission to shift him for better treatment. And treatment was mainly now, the healing had to take place, and he said you can take him to Nagar also. So I remember while we were at Silver Oaks, the ambulance arrived and they brought Pendu on the stretcher and placed him before Baba's bed there. And then Pendu began to weep loudly. He said, Baba, I'm totally crippled. Baba tells Airaj then interprets and says, Baba says, Pendu, don't worry, you will start walking before me, before I do walk. Now go and take good rest and don't worry. Go to Meherabad and get well soon. I'll be coming to stay at Pimpalgaon. He would do this. I have to go to Pimpalgaon. So you go and get well soon. And you'll walk before I do. This is the words of Baba there. And Pendu was groaning away. he of course was partly conscious, partly this, yeah. And then they took him back. And then he went there, he went to Meherabad, there he recovered. Then Pendu was kept at Akbar Press for a few months to recuperate.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Well, we're resuming still on July 27th, just after tea.
Yeah.
And just before tea, you had talked about Pendu's going to Akbar Press to recuperate for several months after that terrible second accident to Baba's.
Yes. So, Baba, as we heard from Aloba, Baba sent Sidhuji and Aloba to look after Pendu and nurse him back to health. And I think first they went to Meherabad and for a few days, and then they were brought to Akbar Press. And at Akbar Press, Aloba was attending on Pendu, and he was recovering very satisfactorily. Regards Baba, of course, as I said, Donkin was making frantic efforts to get the best treatment possible for Baba. Although he showed nothing from outside, inwardly was very highly agitated. Yeah, he could barely see Baba lying there helpless. So he went out into the market and into the junk market. And from there he got a very special bed for Baba. A sort of bed that he then modified and improvised so that Baba could be comfortable on the bed, and so that he could have his all the things done while lying down without having to lift him or disturbing him. So he would come to Bindra house, bring this bed there, then he would put it in the open compound there in the sunlight and keep staring at it for minutes on end, lost in reverie as to how to make it best. Then he would arrange planks and make me lie down on the bed. He says, "You lie down, I want to see the position." And then he would forget that and just go into a reverie for half an hour sometimes, and I had to keep lying down there. Yeah, he had become almost crazed, as it were, with the enormity of the situation. And yes, but he was making all-out efforts, and he came out with a very ingenious contraption with all these pulleys and other things. And eventually I made a bed with mattresses in several pieces, so Baba could do the toilet also without having to be lifted up or anything. He did a very remarkable medical engineering feat, as it were.
It all worked?
It all worked very well. That bed was kept in this room for quite a long time after that, and Bhau used to sleep on it later.
Where is it now?
I wouldn't know. I think it's lying in that outside cottage there. Yeah, it's still there. We got the whole thing painted nice and bright silver. It was a junk he got from somewhere, collected all the parts, and it was some old military bed, He was an orthopedic surgeon himself, so that stood in great stead in both Baba's accidents. And he treated Baba with such great care and tenderness. Yeah. For him, Baba's person was extremely precious, and the way he was trying to treat Baba was really a sight to watch. Yeah. So in any case, then he went in search of specialists who then saw Baba, and whatever was the best treatment available was given to Baba. And Baba seemed to make good progress, and very soon then Baba decided to shift to Meherazad. While Baba was recovering, I remember one day Kaka came back from Meherazad. The she-dog Bhuti had given birth to a litter of puppies. And as she was getting old, Baba was wanting a good puppy from her. And Kaka brought the whole lot for Baba to select. And 3 of them were brought, I think. And Baba selected Mastan. It was a tiny little pup then. All black woolly ball, that's all. And then the puppy grew up to this big, huge dog known as Mastan. And Baba said the other 2 should be given to Padri to take care of. So they were sent to Meherabad, and Baba named him Mastan, and Kaka brought back here and started looking after it. Then meantime Baba returned to Meherazad, and then Baba would, I think, come for treatment sometimes to Pune for checkups and all that. So, one of the times, it was now 1957, I think.
The accident was 2nd
December 56. So, Baba wanted a good place in Pune to recuperate. So again, now we had Guru Prasad in mind whenever Baba would want to come. But we were not sure still. So we were in search of bungalows. In the meantime, again, we approached Sardar Raste to see if the Rani would lend the house again. And sure enough, she sent a telegraphic confirmation that Baba could come and stay in Guru Prasad. So in 57, Baba and Manli and all arrived to stay for some time. And of course the condition was there for the Rani that nobody should come when he would be at Guru Prasad. So that was there, and Baba came and stayed at Guru Prasad. And it so happened that the Rani's brother, his name was Jai Singh Ghorpade. So he happened to pass by Pune, and whenever he passed by Pune, he would come to Guru Prasad for the night stay and then proceed ahead. So that day he happened to come along, and he entered there. So he was stopped, So he says, well, this is my place, how could you all stop me? So he wouldn't listen, So it came to Baba's ears that this has happened. So Baba says, let him occupy one room was kept locked, which was the Rani's personal room. That was not given in the early years. Of course, later Rani gave the whole thing at Baba's disposal. But at that time she had reserved one room which would be kept locked. And this fellow would come and occupy that room. So he came and occupied that room there. So Baba then sent word. Dadi, my cousin, was working in Ganeshkind. And he had a nice little cottage given by the government in the botanical gardens in Pune, where he was working. He had passed his agricultural degree and he was a graduate in agriculture, so he was in charge of the garden there. And he had this cottage, and Baba sent word that tell Dadi to vacate his cottage and I would want to shift there, because since this man is coming here, it will disturb me. So the next day Baba, with bag and baggage, cleared out from Guru Prasad, leaving that fellow in there. And Baba just vacated the place. And the Rani came to know what happened. And she was extremely distressed when she heard what had happened. And then she sent a very wonderful, I think, letter of apologies, asking forgiveness for what had happened, that her brother didn't know about this condition. And I think then Baba sent a good reply to her, she shouldn't worry, and it was all right. And then Baba continued his stay in Ganeshkind for the rest of the stay, and he had a nice time there. It was a quiet little cottage, about 5 miles from Bindra House. It's quite a distance, it's in a locality called Aund, about 5 miles off Pune. And you see, at that time it was adjacent to the government house. The British government had several of these government houses where the governor would come and reside whenever he felt like it. So this there was this government house, and adjoining that was the botanical gardens, just on the river side. Yeah. And now that government house is the headquarters of the Pune University. Yes. So Baba would stay there, and it was a nice, quiet, secluded place. And it was a nice stay Baba had. Of course, there were not all the conveniences of Guru Prasad. It was quite rustic, But
which months were these? Were these still winter time?
No.
Or was it had summer?
It was, yes, summer had arrived.
So this was several months after the accident.
Yeah. Because Baba stayed for several months in
Satara?
No, in that Silver Oaks, for a couple of months, I think, yeah. And then went to Meherazad, and then was here for some time, and then, so I think it must be late summer or something, yeah. So that was the beginning of 1957, and the Rani had her first little shock treatment from Baba. So ever since then, Rani learned the lesson very well, and she gave strict instructions to all those to whom she had given the blank permission to occupy Guru Prasad whenever they felt like, that none should go to Guru Prasad when Baba was there.
Yes.
So it was a very definite instruction sent out by her to all her friends and relatives and all.
Had she met Baba yet?
Not yet.
Again, another of these astonishing cases where one wonders why on earth she would...
She hadn't seen Baba and never heard of him until that time then, in 51. But after that, no contact. Then this was the first after 5 or 6 years, I think. So, and she just would readily accept all conditions that Baba would want to impose on her. So much so that once Baba was occupying Guru Prasad, and she happened to pass by Pune on the way to Kolhapur and all, where her relations were. And Iraj one day saw someone standing out at the gate. So he couldn't make out. Then he saw this very well-dressed, elegant lady standing out. And he wondered, who could that be? She thought somebody is just waiting. Then she continued standing there. And he was curious, so he walked up the driveway right out to the gate there and said, lady, you're waiting for somebody, could I help you? Or something? No, she says, I am the Rani of Baroda. And I wanted to give some message to my man inside. But Baba's instructions are there that nobody should go in. So I was just waiting if somebody would come out and I could relay the message. And Iraj was so moved with this, that here was such a big person there, the very owner of the property, standing out there in the sun and not wanting to disturb, without even seeing Baba, and just literally obeying Baba's order.
You wonder how she knew to do that. So many, it took lesson after lesson before they realized that kind of obedience was due to Baba.
So she wouldn't enter until she espied somebody would come and she could send the message to the man, whatever she wanted to convey. So Iraj said, all right, you wait, I'll get the message too. And then in the meantime, Baba had clapped for Iraj, and Iraj was missing. This is how Baba works. So then this was brought to Baba's ears. So Baba was very well pleased about this. And I don't know whether Baba called her to meet him and gave darshan or not, but I'm not so sure, but something happened then. Yeah. Because such things then melt his heart also, Yeah. And he gives way. That is how you can get around him. By first yourself sacrificing yourself fully, and then it breaks him down, you know. His hardness just suddenly melts into butter, as it were. So this is the game that he plays with his lovers.
Well, we're down to about 2 minutes, I think, or perhaps even less.
Achha. Yeah, so this was the stay at in Ganeshkin, and Baba paid several visits to Ganeshkin thereafter.
Where he stayed there?
I think twice or thrice Baba, because he liked the place very much, because of its quiet nature, totally secluded, no disturbance. And in the meantime, Dadi had got some promotion and he became the total in charge of the botanical garden. So he was given an exclusive bungalow there, which was very nice.
So he was given that.
Yeah, he was promoted several times, and each promotion he got a different cottage, and Baba stayed in each of those cottages. Yeah. And eventually, when he became the superintendent, he had this big bungalow and charge of all the rest of the bungalows. So Baba made use of everything then, kicked out everyone from there. So when he would come, he would stay there, and all of us would visit Baba there. And at Ganeshkind, Bhikubai Milan of Milan Photo Studio first met Baba there. And he has taken those beautiful photos of Baba at Ganeshkin, where he is sitting on this slightly reclining chair and in the open garden, and there is a series of shots of Baba there. Very beautiful. Yeah. So those are in Ganeshkin.
Well, I imagine this is we come to the end of stories of finding bungalows in Pune. I've been struck by how much of an effort this has continued to be over the years.
Yes, because more and more difficult it was getting to get bungalows, because Pune was getting more and more overpopulated. In the old times also it was difficult, but as the years progressed, no bungalows would be available. And the last time we hired the bungalow was this Silver Oaks. Thereafter, by Baba's grace, Guru Prasad became totally at Baba's disposal, and all our hunting for bungalows came to an end. Fortunately for us and for all Baba lovers there, because every time to search bungalows was a nightmarish situation for us.
Sounds like that. Sounds like that. And Baba had provided for there to be some vastly rich lover there who had a place that could something be used.
So this was the vastly rich one was
a Rani.
The Rani of Baroda. She was the Raja of Baroda was the second richest state in India after the Nizam of Hyderabad. The second richest state. So
this is one of the wealthiest people.
Wealthiest. So Guru Prasad, we felt, was such a luxurious place, and she says, Baba, you should see my palace at Baroda. It is a small hut in comparison to that. And Balnatu was once sent to Baroda to meet the Rani, and he was shaking like a leaf when he was sent for this purpose. And then the reception he got there was so wonderful. And he describes the palace also, a huge, gorgeous palace it was. And of course there was another big palace in Bombay, huge estate in prime land on Malabar Hill, I think, in Bombay. Huge estate.
What great good fortune for her that despite all this wealth she was able to recognize.
So it's a very rare combination, Baba said, to have such unlimited wealth at your disposal and to come in contact with the master, the perfect master, and the avatar. Yeah. So she must be really very fortunate indeed. Yeah. So, so that was the stay in 1957, and I haven't yet thought much about this year, so I really don't know if I can give any further details, because Baba was continuing to have this pain in the hip joint, and then X-rays were sent to the UK.
Yeah.
And there was some the world's top authority on orthopedics, and when he examined those plates, he just threw it on the table and said, "This man, whoever is it, will never walk again unless the whole joint is replaced or something."
Yeah.
And Baba was told that he should he said he won't have any surgery.
Yeah.
And that he would walk again. So that was the further miracle that we saw from Baba. This man who gave the opinion that Baba would never walk again, Baba did walk again, as he said he would. So that was another facet of it. Yeah. Is this? Will it fit into this?
Yeah, I think so. This is moving to a very different kind of question, since there are a few minutes left on this tape. I wondered if, since by this time in your life you would have been 26, had the question of your ever getting married been brought up with Baba? I mean, it's just unusual for, in India especially, to go through your life unmarried.
At that time there was no such question, and I had no such thought in my mind also, because it was almost like a marriage, because Baba had given me the responsibility of this whole family to look after, and Iraj was all the while with Baba, so it was like a householder's life that I was already leading. So there was no such question at that time.